Good afternoon and welcome to the Washington State Department of Agriculture's virtual press conference. My name is Carla Selp. I'm the Public Engagement Specialist with WSDA and am an agency spokesperson for the Asian Giant Hornet Project. This afternoon we will hear from Sven Spichiger, who will recount the events from last Saturday when WSDA conducted the first ever eradication of an Asian giant hornet nest in the United States. He will be available for questions from members of the press after he makes his statement. We have photos and videos of our activities this weekend uploaded to our Box account. Links to the media are available in the press release posted to our website. Please note that some photos and videos are only available for use to official members of the press, and the file name will indicate if that is the case. Photos of the eradication are also available to members of the press through Elaine Thompson with the AP. Her contact information is available on the press release that went out earlier today. The property owner will entertain interviews from the press, however, he will not be available until Wednesday. If you are interested in interviewing the property owner, please send a request to me. The agency has received numerous requests for one of the specimens that we collected this weekend. Just to let you know, WSDA is not selling Asian giant hornets. The specimens are being provided to researchers to help develop new tools in our effort to prevent Asian giant hornets from establishing in the Pacific Northwest. Also, our suits are not available to loan for Halloween costumes. As far as we know, Amazon is sold out as well. We do look forward, however, to seeing your COVID-friendly, homemade Asian giant hornet hunter Halloween costumes. Although we have conducted our first nest eradication, this fight is not over. We still need residents to report every single hornet every time they see one. That is what allowed us to be successful in this case. People in Washington State can report suspected Asian giant hornet sightings on our website at agr.wa.gov/hornets, via email at hornets@agr.wa.gov, or on our hotline at 1-800-443-6684. If you suspect you have seen an Asian giant hornet in a different location, please report it to your own state or province's invasive species managers. One last reminder, please keep your line muted to ensure the best sound quality for everyone. Sven, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Alrighty, can you hear me okay?
Coming in loud and clear, thanks.
Alrighty, so, well, we found one and we took it out. We're all pretty happy here, so just start off with that. We've received numerous well wishes from across the country and actually other parts of the world, and from my staff and myself. Thank you. It's very heartening to know that everybody's behind us and have been very supportive in our efforts to date. So thanks to everybody who was thinking of us. Big special thanks to our property owner and all of the neighbors in the localized area where we've been working the last 3 weeks. I know our presence can be overwhelming at times because we have a big crowd behind us, and just wanted to extend my personal thanks again to the property owner for tolerating our presence and allowing us to get our work done. It is much appreciated, so thank you again. All right, so as we learned in the last press conference we held last Friday, on October 22nd, we were able to tag a few hornets and follow one of them back to the first nest located in the United States. And to our surprise, it of course was not in the ground. We got one of the supposedly low percentage that nest in trees. And so we did spend a good portion of the day Friday just going over our eradication protocols, making lists of equipment that would be needed that was different than what we had anticipated. We were able to pull all that together pretty quickly. The reason we wanted to hurry and move the eradication along is because we are entering that time of the year when queens may be emerging, or new queens may be emerging from a nest. So we wanted to make sure that we took the nest out as quickly as we possibly could to avoid any queens escaping. Saturday morning, we kicked off our festivities at 5:30 in the morning, well before civil twilight. And that was to ensure that as many hornets as possible remained in the nest when we performed the eradication. Since the hornet nest was approximately 8 to 10 feet up on the tree, we decided to go with a couple of pieces of scaffolding. And can you hear my audio still?
I can hear you, Sven.
Okay, I'm sorry, I saw a chat. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that too. Can everyone else hear us?
Okay, I think we're good. So basically, we decided to go with some scaffolding because the thought of being on ladders in our Hornet suits is just a little daunting to us, and we were able to get some fairly quickly, get them strapped to the nearby trees. We encountered quite a bit of luck in that it was extremely cold, and I attribute this almost entirely to the reason why the nest seems so docile. We were never once attacked by the hornets coming out of the tree, and we were fortunately able to seal the entrance up quick enough that none were able to escape during the eradication. And so I've seen many videos of nest removals from all over the world, and they generally happen to have hundreds of Asian giant hornets flying around the people doing the work, and that's just not what we experienced. So I think we were very fortunate that our plan of attack sealed them in the nest and allowed us to do our work without really being in any sort of danger throughout the course of it. Now, the tree that we encountered, unfortunately, had a fairly large hollow crevice, and it was impossible to tell exactly where they were coming in and out. So our plan was to use extremely soft foam to fill in that crevice to the area we thought was the entrance. We used our FLIR thermal imaging camera also to sort of confirm where we had a heat signature, which would indicate that the nest was inside the tree, and it seemed like it was localized in one area. So after putting foam in the crevice to seal that off and over top of the entrance itself, we then used shrink wrap to seal everything in place. And then when we were ready and pretty sure that no hornets were going to come pouring out because of the activity, we were able to hook up a generator attached to a vacuum with a special hornet collection chamber, which really isn't all that complicated. It's just a couple reducers, if you will, and a clear plexiglass tube with mesh or wire cloth at the bottom of it to prevent the wasps from going further. What's nice about this is we could see what we were able to collect, and it allowed us to collect them alive. And some of these are actually needed alive to do future research. Dr. Chris Looney, my head taxonomist, the head of our taxonomy section, did the majority of the vacuuming at the hole. Our eradication coordinator, Ryan Wojon, was also one of the ones suited up, as was Cassie Chihorse, our outreach and education specialist, and I was also in a suit helping as well. When we first started vacuuming, the hornets were not too upset with us, and very few came out, so we started hitting the side of the tree with a 2x4 just to kind of get them excited, and that did seem to work. They started pouring out then. All told, we were able to vacuum up 85 specimens. Dr. Chris Looney had netted 13 specimens the Friday before while observing the nest, and that gave us a total of 98 specimens that we collected during our vacuum extraction. Not collected was the queen. We believe the queen to still be inside the tree, but this does not surprise us at all. Normally, the queen would not come out to defend the nest when there's lots of workers to do so. So we believe her to still be in the nest. Also, interestingly, after we had completed our eradication activities, we turned on our radio transponder tracking device, and the tracking tag is still inside the tree, either attached to the hornet that we tagged, or it has fallen off and is in the bottom of the nest somewhere. Once hornets stopped coming out of the nest and into our vacuum device, we decided to finish it off by basically asphyxiating the rest of them by introducing carbon dioxide gas into the nest chamber. Dr. Looney did notice larvae falling down, presumably dead from asphyxiation. And after we did that for probably 10-15 minutes, we sealed it up with expanding foam, rewrapped it with shrink wrap, and then we have basically hired a contractor to come and remove the tree or drop it for us so that we can have it sectioned and then examine the nest further on probably Wednesday, maybe Thursday. It really depends on the schedule of the contractor. But at this point, we believe everything in the nest to be dead, and we can declare this an successful eradication of the first nest. We are all extremely thrilled. As Carla mentioned, we've received many requests for specimens, mostly for private collectors, and unfortunately, that's not going to be able to happen with this particular eradication. Several of these are going alive to the USDA so that we can continue to do research on lures and attractants. Basically, we will be doing assays to see what types of chemicals they react to, and we have not had this opportunity yet, as most of these are alive over in Japan, Korea, and other parts of Asia. So this is the first time a researcher will be able to look at that here in the United States. The rest of them will be flash frozen, and that means in a -80 freezer, and so that we can do work on the genome. For this, we will also provide some of the ones that are frozen to APHIS's Otis laboratory, where they will do a body wash basically to try to pick up chemicals that may be involved as pheromone cues as well. And the rest of these are pretty much going to be slated for land-grant universities so that they can be put to use for education and outreach, which is the charge of a land-grant university. And most of those that have collections will be receiving specimens of these. We have to, of course, arrange for mailing and all of that and get them pinned up first, but that's pretty much going to do it for all of the specimens that we collected. I've had several questions about the equipment we used. Our suits are made by Venom, and we purchased them off of Amazon. Actually, our safety team was kind enough to provide those for us back in February. We actually still don't know if they work, so I wouldn't run out and buy one just yet. As I mentioned, no one was stung, and none of us were even attacked by a hornet while performing this eradication. And as a manager, I am absolutely thrilled that I had zero paperwork to fill out for injuries during this whole event. And so from my perspective, that alone was a huge success. No one was stung and no one was even attacked that we're aware of. And so that was a wonderful coup. And I also had specific questions from 911 services in Korea and other places. We don't actually believe it matters what brand of shop vac we're using, just that it has very strong suction and is reliable. But it is literally a shop vac, and our special collection chamber, which looks great, uses, I guess, reducers made by Fernco Company. Somebody wanted to know that specifically. And that's what they are. They're flexible pipe reducers, basically. And inside of the one on the bottom, there's a wire cloth, which stops the hornets from going down into the vacuum itself. And then we top it off with a cork on the end once we're done doing the vacuuming. Interestingly, all of the hornets that we vacuumed up looked quite dead the morning of the eradication. They were not moving at all. Dr. Chris Looney took them back, and they all revived and were quite active. I believe he took a video of that. I'm not sure if Carla has that available or not, but you can actually hear them buzzing. It's a pretty nice video. And with that, Carla, did I forget anything at all?
I think we just wanted to mention the USDA role.
Yes. So yes, we did have a member of the USDA with us to assist throughout the entire thing. And of course, very little of this is possible without their funding. And what would we do without the loan of their trackers? They turned out to be extremely useful in getting to the nest. And I'm going to tell you right now, being the one who was literally standing under the nest when it was found, we don't find this nest without the tracker, I don't think, unless it's a bad day for someone. And so to me, the trackers provided by the USDA really helped to make this happen. And this happened on very short notice. I believe they overnighted this to us the Thursday before, and we already had them in the field and working, and put them to use within less than a week. So our thanks again go out to the USDA, who has been nothing but supportive throughout this entire thing. And one battle down, we assume we have one or two more nests based on our trapping from this year, and we're going to continue to look for those and just keep fighting this. Keep fighting these battles until we have eradicated Asian giant hornet, if that's possible.
Great, thank you, Sven. We'll now be taking questions, but first a couple of reminders. Please do not unmute your own line to help control have the best sound. And if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function, and I will call on you and unmute your line for you so that you can ask your question at that time. You can also submit questions using the chat function. So, oops. Sorry. Okay, we have Joe Tian up here. I'm going to unmute your line. You can ask your question.
Okay, there we go. Thanks. I'm just wondering if the hornets from a specific nest carry a genetic identifier that would connect them to that nest, and if you can use that to get an idea of how many other nests might be out there by testing the other hornets that you've captured outside of this specific nest.
Okay. Fairly detailed question. Not sure I know the answer to that one. I do know that we can sometimes check back and see if a particular nest is related to a certain population somewhere else. We've done that with other organisms like spotted lanternfly. As to whether or not this queen is related to another nest that may be out there, I think we almost have to assume that. Generally speaking, when a nest goes through, several queens come out, and I don't think we need a DNA analysis to know that she was one of basically a graduating class from last year. Probably. There's always a remote possibility that she was a new introduction earlier in the year, but the more likely scenario is one nest went through last year, and this is just one of them that was able to succeed.
Great, here's a question from the chat. Bellamy asks, how many nests do you think might still be in the area or elsewhere, and how do you know? How will you proceed to try and eradicate those? When, if ever, does the season for nest hunting end?
Okay, so seems like three questions here. We believe there to be at least three this year, and this is based solely on our trapping data. We have captured specimens in downtown Blaine, down in the Birch Bay area a couple of different times, and then just one specimen over in Custer, which was a male. So we're not sure if he was just out roaming or whatever. But, there's a chance for three more based on trapping data alone. The nest hunting season ends after we get a couple of really cold, hard freezes, if you will, and things start flying for the year. I'm really hesitant to say we're ever really going to truly end it, because I will literally investigate reports in January if people call them in. So, I mean, for us, it's never really truly over, but the trapping is scheduled to end towards the end of November, probably the day before Thanksgiving. Will be the last traps that we take down. At least that's when our WSDA trappers will be done. But since we had evidence of them flying on December 8th last year after a few hard freezes, we will continue to man the phone lines and things and investigate reports if they come in even that late. And so that's kind of when it ends. As to whether or not we're interested in nests after a point where breeding cast has gone out, the answer is absolutely yes. Recovering a nest that's already spent is also of great value because it gives us an idea of what we might be dealing with next year. So it's important to investigate those if it comes up. But to be honest, without a specimen to track back through some of the terrain we're in, it would be very difficult to locate a nest without having one of the workers take us back to it, is at least what we're experiencing. And did I forget the third part, Carla?
No, I think you covered it all.
Okay.
Nick from Como, I'm going to unmute your line so you can ask your question.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. I was wondering how many years would total eradication take when it comes to these hornets? And then also, how long will it take, or where would we get until we've reached sort of an uncontrollable amount of hornets to where they now have to be a part of our society here in the Northwest?
Okay, so both pretty good questions. I can't tell you how long it will take. I know it's going to take at least 3 years of negative survey data till I can tell you, hey, it's eradicated. And so as long as people keep turning in positives and the numbers remain low, we are going to continue our attempts to eradicate. Again, we've had thousands of traps literally out this year, not just with us, but with the great citizens of Washington. And we still only have hits in Whatcom County at this point. And so that's still a very small area that we're dealing with. So definitely worth the battle. When we would consider it probably a totally lost cause is when I come in and there's, 20 calls every hour telling me I've seen one and they're in 20 different counties. I mean, there's really no cut and dry for saying when it's too late and we're giving up the fight. But right now it still looks cautiously optimistic that we are still kind of ahead of this. And so as long as we do this and we continue to work with our Canadian counterparts and we all help each other, like everybody's been doing, I think we still stand a really good chance of keeping this out.
Curtis asks, you mentioned that the vacuumed out hornets look dead and the images of the hornets in the vacuum container show that. Is that from CO2 or something else?
Honestly, I think it's just because it was so cold. These hornets, like a lot of other insects, have a lot of difficulty moving and operating in cold temperatures. In fact, when we want to handle them, when we're tracking, we do put them in a cooler of ice, and that does seem to calm them down, and that's how these were behaving. But honestly, when Dr. Looney took them back and warmed them up, they all woke up. And Carla, can you confirm, are we sharing his video yet? Because they are quite active after warming up.
Yes, Dr. Looney's video was posted on social media this morning.
Okay, and so I encourage everybody to take a look at that. It's a pretty nice video. I think it might be my new screensaver.
It's also available in our Box account for download, just as an FYI. Okay, Demetrius, your line is now unmuted. You can ask your question.
Hi, this is Demetrius from CNN. I was wondering if you could talk about sort of how the hornet is an invasive species and kind of what does this mean, the work that you guys are doing, why is it so important? Even though it's in Washington, why would it be important for other people across the country to kind of be aware of these hornets?
Okay, certainly. So anytime you introduce an invasive species and it is successful in establishing, it generally replaces other species that were meant to be here and that are important parts of the ecosystem. More importantly for agriculture, these are severe pests of managed honeybees, which are the main source of pollination for a lot of our agricultural systems. And so even though we're just fighting this fight right here in Washington right now, it is literally for the rest of the country because habitat models show that this species is completely well suited, not just to live here in the Pacific Northwest along the coasts, but also basically anywhere east of the Mississippi River. And so, it's a battle that's worth fighting, and certainly just to protect our managed pollinator system alone is a great reason to do it.
Jeff Ott from Beekeeping Today says, could you tell us how long the nest was in this location? This season only, last year too, perhaps?
Well, from what we understand of the life stages, and there's always exceptions to every rule, we understand that a colony dies out every single year, and that this colony was established by a new queen who had overwintered as a mated queen. And so it can only have been in this location based on its biology for a year. There are exceptions to this rule, but I doubt very seriously that this one was an exception to the rule. We only were able to vacuum out and collect about 100 specimens total. It is in a kind of a confined space in a tree, so hopefully it's a smaller one. We'll find out more on Wednesday whether or not it was large, but it's doubtful that it was a second year colony, if you will.
Hey, Asher Jones, you are unmuted and may ask your question.
Hi, thank you for doing this. Yeah, so I was interested in the tracking devices that you use to track these wasps. I guess in particular, I wanted to clarify whether the previous attempts you used to track the hornets was you were using Bluetooth devices, but this successful tracking was using radio trackers. And then also if you were just able to provide any more details about how this tracking process works or anything about the technology. Thank you.
Sure. So first of all, we had originally tried the Bluetooth tracking devices, mostly because of strength in numbers and ease of use. However, the signal doesn't carry quite as far as we need, and so we switched to a radio tracker. We actually ended up purchasing 3 receivers and some radio tags from one company. But in waiting for those to get there, the USDA very generously came through and loaned us equipment that they had been using this summer in the spotted lanternfly program that they were finished with for the year. They overnighted it. And these are very small little nano tags. I believe they're 0.15 grams. And the huge advantage that these provide is that the signal carries for these quite a bit longer distance. And the other thing is the Bluetooth tags really only last about 12 hours, whereas these, I believe the tag that ended up winning the race, if you will, was one we had activated during a training session the Wednesday previous. It was still blipping nice and strong after we had done the eradication on Saturday, which is why I knew it was in the tree. And so just having this available really did help us to up our game, if you will, and really help lead to this success.
Karen Larson asks, are you coordinating at all with officials on the Canadian side of the border? Can you give any details?
Sure, absolutely. Mostly we are working with Paul Van Westendorp and Conrad Berube, who are both with the provincial government there. And both of these fellows were involved in the Nanaimo nest find and eradication last September. And we don't get to every meeting together, but they're invited basically to sit down in all of our planning meetings, and they have attended many of them. We, of course, share notes on what traps are working. They tell us, if they have some ideas that maybe we hadn't thought of. It's been very helpful, but I do know they have traps up all along the border, kind of right where we've been operating as well. And of course, we're sharing our capture and our eradication data with them as it's happening. And in fact, Paul was kind enough to give us the very first specimens that we had to use for outreach last December even. He made a point to go out of his way to deliver 4 specimens so that we could use them. And so, yes, we've been collaborating with our Canadian counterparts since the beginning.
Judith Stanford Miller asks, or she says, thank you for doing this. Can you speak to the potential impact on agriculture in Washington, especially the apple crop, if the hornet were able to get a foothold in the state?
Well, certainly, as we stated previously, since these are predators on managed pollinators, obviously any loss of managed pollinators is going to impact any crop that depends on that. And certainly apple crops are one of these crops that we use. We're also very concerned about our berry crops. We do a lot of blueberries and other cane fruits, particularly up in the region we're working right now. And so this is a little scary. We don't want migratory beekeepers, if you will, those are beekeepers who move their hives around to pollinate crops, to think that it's unsafe to be here. And so obviously, if that happens, that's not something we want to see. So that's why we've taken this so seriously, not just for Washington, but for the rest of the country as well.
So Bellamy was asking again, just to clarify, I think only one nest in the area where we were just conducted the eradication, or do you think there could be more nests in that particular area, I think?
There could be. In fact, we've actually left our trapping arrays in place, and we're going to keep them up for some time. one thing the property owner did tell us is that some of the ones that were kind of probably stuck out and sleeping abroad overnight did start returning, and he was able to capture those, I believe. But, you know, it's entirely possible there's more than one nest in that area. The way I think about this is, again, we go back to the big likelihood here is that we had a nest go all the way through last year, which isn't a surprise because we only knew about this in December, and that one or more queens from that original nest were successful. So it would stand to reason that there are some other queens in the area that were able to develop a fully functioning nest, and we just haven't found them yet. We'll know more in the next couple of weeks. If our traps are still picking up hornets in that area, we're going to have to be a little suspicious that there's another one. And if we pick up more live ones anywhere, of course, we'll attach trackers to them, even if we think it goes to this nest, just to confirm that.
Joshua McNichols asks, why the red lights on the protective gear?
Insects actually have quite a bit of difficulty seeing red light in the dark, but humans can. And so I don't know if you were a fisherman and your parents took you out to collect night crawlers at night, but you use a red flashlight because they won't see it and gives you an advantage. If you turn a white light on, it seems to agitate them. Actually, Chris found this out kind of really early on Friday when he shined his white headlamp into it in the evening, and it seemed to agitate them a little. When we were looking at them with a red light, they paid us absolutely no mind. So that's the reason for the red lights.
Another question from Joshua. How will you trap nests in the ground? I think you might mean eradicate nests in the ground. In this case, the tree seems to have made it easier to asphyxiate them.
Actually, we were debating that a little bit. I'm not entirely sure we did asphyxiate all of them. There could be holes in the tree cavity we just aren't aware of, and the gas was able to escape. But with the amount of gas we pumped into it, I'm pretty sure we did. With a ground nest, from everything we've read in the literature, there is only the one entrance. And so you basically have a sealed container in the ground that you can fill up with CO2 gas. In fact, one of our original strategies was just to pump CO2 gas in, but now that we have some practice basically blocking off the entrance, once we found the nest, the plan was to use, we have a little pop-up tent we use for, handling insects that has an arm sleeve in it. And that's to put that over the entrance to contain the outflow of hornets pouring out of there. We will then insert the vacuum into that tent, get those that are in the tent, and then continue to get the ones pouring out of the hive. But actually, to me, a ground nest is going to be a little bit easier because I don't need to bring in a contractor to drop a tree and then try to hack the tree up to get the nest out. So we're still not completely out of the woods. When we drop the tree, there's a chance there might be something still alive in there. So we still have to sort of be on guard. In a ground nest scenario, we're going to know that the job is done right there and then. So to me, that would actually be preferred.
Don Jenkins asks if tracking a hornet back to a ground nest will be more difficult than tracking one to a nest in a tree.
I'm going to have to say probably not. The tags we're using seem to do very well. In fact, I believe it's one of our counterparts that we exchange ideas with in Jersey, in Great Britain. I believe actually already did some tests where he buried the trackers in the ground a little bit and was still able to get a fairly strong signal. Chris Looney may correct me on that because he's the one who was in contact, but I believe that's who did that. And the fact that this tracker is seemingly inside of the tree and I'm still getting such a strong signal, I have to think that a radio signal carrying from inside a void in a tree has to be very similar to one under the ground as well. And remember, they're not going too far in the ground, so some signal should be able to get out.
Next question, how many nests would signal that the problem is out of control?
I don't think there's a clearly defined number. If a nest kicks out 200 queens, in a very localized area and we find all 200, I'm not too concerned. It's more the spatial location of the nests. When we start finding them all over the place and there's no explanation for them, that's when I start thinking there's a problem that we're not going to be able to deal with. As long as it remains localized, I think we're probably okay to continue with the thought of eradication as possible.
Could these hornets survive in the eastern Washington farm belt?
Most habitat models say no. If you think about the habitat there, probably not. However, you wouldn't think that a park in downtown Nanaimo would be completely suitable, yet it was. And so I'm sure there's little microclimates anywhere in the country that might be considered suitable, but I don't think they're going to thrive in eastern Washington once you get down out of the mountains.
When do you estimate the slaughter phase began this year, and what triggers it in the nest?
Switch over to producing breeding casts is what we believe is one of the things that triggers it, as well as temperature and length of daylight. Most of the attack reports we got from last year, which we confirmed, I believe were from right around this past week, like October 21st, October 22nd of 2019. We have not yet received a report. We did investigate one report while we were up there, but those bees were dead of something else. We dropped everything and looked immediately since it was so close to where we were working. But again, there was absolutely no evidence that Asian giant hornet was involved in that. It was just a beehive that died. But yeah, about this time of year. So we're still continuing to maintain our apiary line for apiary attacks. And I haven't received any calls yet, and I don't believe anyone else who was on duty has either.
So this is a follow-up back to a previous question. We were mentioning a second year nest. Does that mean that the original nest from last year is likely still here and in its second year and bigger?
No, it's likely dead. These nests usually only last 1 year, and then everybody in the nest usually ends up dying out. Again, I'm not going to say that that always happens because nature is full of exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, it's a 1 year life cycle for these colonies.
So I'm going to I'm going to answer the next one. It's asking about the property owner. The property owner does not want to be identified on publicly, but he can. You can send me a request if you would like to interview him, and he will consider those requests. And there was a question about when he reached out to us. He didn't actually reach out to us. We just ended up on his property when we followed the hornet. So the poor guy just had us land in his backyard, basically. You want to have anything to add to that, Sven?
Oh, just they were actually, it was a little terrifying because the first thing we saw was their children's play set, less than 20, 30 feet from the active nest. And so that's when we knew we had to contact them immediately. Like Carla said, we followed the hornet there. We weren't called there.
Okay, and this is the last question that I have in the chat. So if anybody does have additional questions, please be sure to enter them now or raise your hand so that we can get to them. Last question I have right now is, how tall is the tree and what kind is it?
It's a dead tree with a little bit of bark left, and it's fairly tall, 60 feet or so, almost 2 foot in diameter, if you will. And those of us who know trees are 99% sure it's an alder tree. So that's very much what it looks like.
There's a question about how cold was it on Saturday morning?
Well, I wasn't scraping ice, but it was certainly down in the 30s.
How dangerous to humans are the hornets?
As long as you avoid them and do not approach nests or do anything crazy like run over them with a lawnmower, they're not entirely dangerous. However, if you stumble into a nest or agitate them or surprise even a lone worker by accidentally sitting on it, they will defend themselves, and the sting is extremely painful. People that have been stung have told us this. If you are particularly sensitive with allergies, you could die from one sting, but that's rare. The likelihood of it being extremely dangerous is when you accidentally stumble into a nest and you sustain multiple stings. This has been known to cause fatalities in Asia for years. The numbers seem to vary depending upon who you talk to, but in Japan alone, it's between 20 to 50 deaths every year. Of course, there are quite a few more colonies there. We don't ever want it to get to that. Again, this colony that we found did not act like it typically acts according to the literature. I was literally standing under the entrance when we found it. Chris and I were having a conversation and they started flying over our heads, and I was closer than we should have been. So we were very fortunate, as were all the folks who participated. If you really do take some time and view some nest eradications and reports from Asia, you will see that this is actually a fairly dangerous thing if you go and mess with it. Otherwise, they're not going to hunt you down. A chance encounter would be the only time you might actually be in any danger of being stung, and usually one sting is not going to kill you.
Can you further explain your level of concern about the 3 or likely 3 nests?
Actually, it kind of varies. The one in Blaine is of great concern to me because we had a lot of activity last year. We had several apiaries attack last year in Blaine, and this is probably one that I just can't attribute to the other detections we have, and it came so late. In fact, I believe it was either last week or the week before that we haven't had time to have a proper trapping array out. I mean, the trapping array has been deployed immediately, but it wasn't out long enough to really catch anything else to help us hone in on it. So that one concerns me a bit. Birch Bay is confusing. We had an unmated queen, we had a worker, and then we had a photograph of another worker, and then nothing for 3 months. And that is very confusing to me. And then having the male in Custer, a male, of course, in and of itself is nothing. He can mate with a queen. So there's probably maybe not a nest there, but we have to treat it like there is. But to me, the one in Birch Bay is of great concern because we just don't know what's going on and we don't know why they stopped coming to traps. And then, of course, the one in Blaine, because we've had so many hits in the area. And I'm not sure we're done in the area that we just eradicated the nest. It's a very large wooded area, and clearly a nest nearby was successful the year previous. So, or likely that was the case. And so to me, level of concern is still there, but the whole staff is actually pretty thrilled. We've now demonstrated that we can actively trap, track, find a nest and take it out. We can do it efficiently and without getting people hurt. And that's really what we need to be able to do to really win the war overall, if you will.
Can you speak more to the life cycles and typical colonization of these hornets? How many nests are in an area typically, like 10 to 20 or 3 to 4? I think it means in the native range.
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that one off the top of my head. We might have to have Chris remind me what publication that's in, but the generalized distribution, one thing I do remember from the literature is they don't like to tolerate other nests in a nearby area. In fact, they're known to attack nests of their own species if there is too much competition in the area. And the fact that we don't know how far queens disperse makes it very difficult for us to even wager a guess at that answer.
Can you speak to the nature of the venom? Is it more toxic or potent than other hornet species?
It's not. Actually, it's not even more toxic than our managed honeybees. It's just that it's delivered in such a larger dose, and the fact that they can sting you multiple times and deliver venom multiple times is the problem. It also causes necrosis around the wound and severe swelling. And in addition, if the necrosis causes proteins to break down, I believe is what we read. And this can eventually lead to organ failure and some other complications and things like that. So for those reasons, it is more dangerous than other things you're bound to run into, but it's, I believe technically it's not more toxic.
So there's a question if we can post a list of the trapped hornets by location. That does exist on our website at agr.wa.gov/hornets under data. However, I'm quite certain that the traps from the catches from last week, and especially not the nest eradication, have not been added to that yet. So we're still working on getting that updated, but that will be the best place to find that information. And let's really get down to the next question. Can you give us the number of hornets collected from the nest and to confirm the queen was not found? I think we did that, but let's do it one more time.
Sure. We vacuumed up 85 and netted 13 as they were leaving the nest the day before, for a total of 98. And the queen was not captured, and we did not recover the hornet that had the tag on it. And in fact, the tag was still inside the nest after we had performed the eradication.
Does the photo of the canister with the wasps in it show all 85 vacuumed hornets, or were they captured in several batches?
No, it shows all 85.
There have been reports mentioning these hornets, quote unquote, spitting venom, especially into the human eyes. Is that true?
Some folks have been splitting hairs about this, spitting being close to a synonym for spraying. They spray it. And so, yes, a lot of hornets are capable of spraying venom. In fact, during one of our original tagging attempts, as Dr. Looney was attempting to reposition the tag in a chamber, the hornet did release a substance which we believe to be venom in his direction. And from what we've read, it can actually injure your eyes if you are sprayed in the eyes. And that's why our protective suits actually have a face covering and come with goggles.
Great. Thanks, Sven. That looks to be all of the questions. We'd really like to thank everyone for participating in today's press conference. I was going to say webinar, but we will post this up on YouTube as soon as we can. Should be available later this afternoon. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.